Question 1. Governance review demonstrates that Ms. Chan, a licensed estate agent in Hong Kong, has successfully concluded a property sale for her client Mr. Lee. Considering the post-closing responsibilities and the regulatory environment in Hong Kong, which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and compliant follow-up strategy for Ms. Chan? Option A. Contact Mr. Lee within a week to confirm his satisfaction with the transaction and offer a general overview of current property market trends, emphasizing that this is not specific investment advice. Option B. Cease all communication with Mr. Lee, assuming all professional duties are fulfilled upon closing the transaction. Option C. Send Mr. Lee a mass email containing advertisements for various properties currently on the market without any personal follow-up. Option D. Immediately contact Mr. Lee to propose specific investment opportunities in other property developments based on her analysis of market trends. Correct answer is A. Contact Mr. Lee within a week to confirm his satisfaction with the transaction and offer a general overview of current property market trends, emphasizing that this is not specific investment advice. Explanation. Governance review demonstrates that a licensed salesperson in Hong Kong, Ms. Chan, has recently completed a significant property transaction for client Mr. Lee. The post-closing period presents several potential challenges, including ensuring client satisfaction, managing expectations regarding future market movements, and adhering to ongoing regulatory obligations. The professional challenge lies in balancing proactive client engagement with the avoidance of misrepresentation or the provision of unlicensed advice, all while maintaining compliance with the Hong Kong Estate Agents Ordinance, Cap. 511, and its subsidiary legislation, as well as the Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct issued by the Estate Agents Authority, EA. The best approach involves Ms. Chan proactively reaching out to Mr. Lee within a reasonable time frame after closing to confirm his satisfaction with the transaction and to offer a brief, general overview of the property market's current trends, without making specific predictions or recommendations. This approach is correct because it demonstrates a commitment to client care and relationship building, which is ethically encouraged. Crucially, it stays within the bounds of permissible post-transaction follow-up by offering general market information, not specific investment advice, thereby avoiding potential breaches of the Estate Agents Ordinance, which prohibits the provision of financial or investment advice by licensed estate agents. This also aligns with the EAA's Code of Ethics, which emphasizes acting in the best interests of clients and maintaining professional standards. An incorrect approach would be for Ms. Chan to immediately contact Mr. Lee to discuss potential future investment opportunities in the property market, suggesting specific areas for further investment based on her perceived market trends. This is professionally unacceptable because it risks crossing the line into providing unlicensed investment advice, which is a serious regulatory breach under Hong Kong law. Estate agents are licensed to facilitate property transactions, not to act as financial advisors. Another incorrect approach would be for Ms. Chan to do nothing further after the closing, assuming her professional obligations have ended. This is ethically deficient as it neglects the principle of client care and fails to address any potential post-transaction queries or concerns Mr. Lee might have, potentially damaging the firm's reputation and failing to uphold professional standards. Finally, an incorrect approach would be for Ms. Chan to send Mr. Lee generic marketing materials for other properties without any personalized follow-up or inquiry into his satisfaction with the recent transaction. While not directly illegal, this lacks genuine client engagement and misses an opportunity to reinforce client trust and gather valuable feedback. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes client welfare and regulatory compliance. This involves understanding the scope of their license and ethical obligations, distinguishing between general market information and specific advice, and maintaining open communication channels with clients while respecting legal and ethical boundaries. Proactive, yet cautious, follow-up that confirms satisfaction and offers general, non-advisory market insights is the hallmark of responsible post-closing conduct. Question 2. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a property salesperson in Hong Kong has a professional obligation to accurately convey the importance of real estate as an asset. Which of the following approaches best fulfills this obligation? Option A. Educating the client on the diverse roles of real estate as an investment, including capital appreciation, rental income, and inflation hedging, while also transparently discussing associated risks and market volatilities. Option B, focusing exclusively on the potential for rapid price increases and speculative gains in the Hong Kong property market to maximize immediate client interest. Option C, assuring the client that real estate in Hong Kong is a guaranteed risk-free investment with predictable returns. Option D, presenting real estate solely as a necessity for shelter, downplaying its potential as a wealth-building investment. The correct answer is A, educating the client on the diverse roles of real estate as an investment, including capital appreciation, rental income, and inflation hedging, while also transparently discussing associated risks and market volatilities. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a salesperson to balance the immediate financial interests of a client with the long-term implications of property ownership and market dynamics. Misrepresenting the importance of real estate as an investment can lead to significant financial harm for the client and damage the salesperson's reputation and the industry's integrity. Careful judgment is required to provide accurate, unbiased advice that aligns with the client's best interests and regulatory obligations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves educating the client on the multifaceted nature of real estate as an asset. This includes explaining its potential for capital appreciation, rental income generation, and its role as a hedge against inflation, while also acknowledging the associated risks such as market downturns, maintenance costs, and liquidity issues. This approach is correct because it aligns with the Hong Kong Estate Agents Ordinance and its subsidiary regulations, which mandate that licensed persons act honestly and with due diligence, providing clients with accurate and comprehensive information to make informed decisions. Ethical guidelines also emphasize client welfare and transparency. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to solely emphasize the speculative potential of real estate, highlighting only rapid price increases and ignoring potential downsides. This fails to meet the duty of care and honesty required by the Estate Agents Ordinance, as it presents a one-sided and potentially misleading view of the investment. It can lead clients to make decisions based on incomplete or exaggerated information, violating the principle of acting in the client's best interest. Another incorrect approach is to downplay the importance of real estate as an investment, focusing only on its utility as a place to live. While owner-occupation is a valid reason for purchasing property, this approach neglects the significant wealth-building and income-generating potential that real estate can offer, which is a crucial aspect of its importance as an asset class. This omission can deprive clients of valuable investment opportunities and advice, failing to provide a complete picture of the asset's value. A third incorrect approach is to present real estate as a guaranteed, risk-free investment. This is fundamentally untrue and violates the principle of providing accurate information. The Hong Kong market, like any other, is subject to economic fluctuations and other risks. Misrepresenting real estate as a foolproof investment is a serious ethical breach and a contravention of the regulatory requirement to act with integrity and avoid misrepresentation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a client-centric approach, prioritizing education and transparency. This involves understanding the client's financial goals, risk tolerance, and motivations for purchasing property. They should then provide a balanced perspective on real estate's importance, covering both its investment potential and inherent risks, supported by factual market information. This ensures that clients can make well-informed decisions that are in their best long-term interest, upholding both regulatory compliance and professional ethics. Question 3. Compliance review shows that a property salesperson in Hong Kong is advising a client on purchasing a residential property. The client is interested in understanding the different ways they can hold title to the property. The salesperson needs to explain the implications of fee simple, leasehold, joint tenancy, and tenancy in common. Which of the following approaches best demonstrates professional and regulatory compliance? Option A. Clearly explain the fundamental differences between fee simple, leasehold, joint tenancy, and tenancy in common, highlighting the rights, responsibilities, and potential future implications of each for the client's specific circumstances and investment goals in Hong Kong. Option B. Focus primarily on the immediate financial advantages of the ownership structure that offers the lowest initial purchase price, without extensively detailing potential future liabilities or complexities. Option C. Assume the client is familiar with property law and proceed with recommending an ownership structure based on common practice, without explicitly defining each type or its associated risks. Option D. Emphasize the speed and ease of completing the transaction, briefly mentioning the ownership types but suggesting the client can research the details later to expedite the sale. The correct answer is A. Clearly explain the fundamental differences between fee simple, leasehold, joint tenancy, and tenancy in common, highlighting the rights, responsibilities, and potential future implications of each for the client's specific circumstances and investment goals in Hong Kong. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a salesperson to navigate the complexities of property ownership types and their implications for a client's investment strategy, particularly concerning the potential for disputes and the need for clear, accurate advice. Misunderstanding or misrepresenting these ownership structures can lead to significant legal and financial repercussions for the client and reputational damage for the salesperson. Careful judgment is required to ensure the client's best interests are protected through informed decision-making. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves clearly explaining the fundamental differences between fee simple, leasehold, joint tenancy, and tenancy in common, highlighting the rights, responsibilities, and potential future implications of each for the client's specific circumstances and investment goals in Hong Kong. This approach ensures the client receives comprehensive and accurate information, enabling them to make an informed decision about the most suitable ownership structure. This aligns with the Hong Kong Estate Agents Ordinance and its subsidiary regulations, which mandate that agents provide accurate and truthful information to clients and act in their best interests. Ethical guidelines also require transparency and a thorough explanation of complex matters. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves focusing solely on the immediate financial benefits of a particular ownership type, without adequately detailing the associated risks and long-term implications. This fails to meet the ethical obligation to provide a holistic view and can lead to clients making decisions based on incomplete information, potentially exposing them to future disputes or financial losses. This contravenes the principle of acting in the client's best interests and providing full disclosure. Another incorrect approach is to assume the client has a pre-existing understanding of property ownership and to proceed with recommendations without verifying their knowledge or explaining the nuances of each type. This can result in misinterpretations and decisions that do not align with the client's actual needs or understanding, potentially leading to future conflicts. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to ensure client comprehension. A further incorrect approach is to prioritize closing the sale over providing thorough advice on ownership structures. This might involve downplaying potential complexities or risks associated with certain ownership types to expedite the transaction. Such conduct is unethical and violates regulatory requirements to act with integrity and to ensure clients are fully informed before committing to a property transaction. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a client-centric approach, prioritizing education and transparency. This involves actively listening to the client's goals, assessing their understanding of property ownership, and then providing clear, detailed explanations of all relevant ownership types, including their legal and financial ramifications within the Hong Kong context. A structured approach, starting with a broad overview and then delving into specifics based on client needs, is crucial. Professionals must always be prepared to answer questions thoroughly and ensure the client feels confident and informed before making any decisions. Question 4. Market research demonstrates that a significant number of property transactions in Hong Kong are influenced by land use regulations. A salesperson is representing a client interested in purchasing a property in the Yuen Long district. The property is currently operating as a small workshop, but the client expresses interest in potentially expanding the business in the future. What is the most responsible and legally compliant approach for the salesperson to take regarding the property's zoning and land use? Option A. Thoroughly review the outline zoning plan, OSP, for the Yuen Long district and any relevant development statements to understand the designated land use for the property and any restrictions on its current or potential future use, and then clearly communicate these findings to the client. Option B. Advise the client that zoning is a complex matter and that they should conduct their own independent research without providing any specific guidance or information. Option C. Proceed with the transaction, assuming the current workshop use is lawful and that any future expansion plans will be easily approved by the relevant authorities. Option D. Rely on the seller's assurance that the property has always been used as a workshop and that there are no known issues with its land use. The correct answer is A. Thoroughly review the outline zoning plan, OSP, for the Yuen Long District and any relevant development statements to understand the designated land use for the property and any restrictions on its current or potential future use, and then clearly communicate these findings to the client. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a licensed salesperson in Hong Kong because it requires navigating the complexities of the town planning ordinance and its associated development statements and outline zoning plans, OSP. Misinterpreting or failing to adhere to these regulations can lead to significant legal repercussions for the salesperson and their clients, including fines and disciplinary action from the estate agent's authority. The salesperson must demonstrate a thorough understanding of land use restrictions and the implications for property transactions. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively identifying and communicating potential land use restrictions to the client. This approach is correct because it aligns with the salesperson's duty of care and the requirements of the estate agent's ordinance, which mandates that agents act honestly and with due diligence. Specifically, understanding the implications of the town planning board's decisions and the details within the relevant OZP for the property's designated zone is paramount. This includes recognizing that a property's current use might not be permissible under the OZP, or that future development might be constrained. By thoroughly reviewing the OZP and any relevant development statements, the salesperson can provide accurate information to the client, enabling informed decision-making and preventing potential disputes or legal issues arising from undisclosed land use limitations. Incorrect approach is analysis. Failing to investigate the property's zoning and land use restrictions, assuming the current use is lawful and will remain so, is professionally unacceptable. This approach ignores the fundamental responsibility of a salesperson to disclose material facts, including those related to land use, which directly impact a property's value and usability. It violates the duty of care and could lead to a client purchasing a property with unforeseen restrictions or a need for costly rezoning applications. Relying solely on the seller's verbal assurances regarding land use without independent verification is also professionally unsound. A seller may believe their property's use is compliant. They may be mistaken or unaware of specific nuances within the town planning ordinance. The salesperson's obligation is to conduct due diligence, not to blindly trust the seller's representations, especially when official zoning information is publicly available and definitive. Assuming that any proposed development will automatically be approved by the town planning board, regardless of the OZP stipulations, is a serious regulatory failure. The OZP provides the framework for land use and development control, and proposed developments must conform to its objectives and specific requirements. A salesperson must understand the zoning and its implications for any potential future development, rather than making optimistic assumptions that could mislead a client. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and diligent approach to understanding and communicating land use regulations. This involves 1. Identifying the relevant jurisdiction's land use legislation, in this case, the town planning ordinance in Hong Kong. 2. Locating and thoroughly reviewing official zoning maps, OSP, and any associated development statements for the property in question. 3. Cross-referencing the property's current use and any proposed future uses against the zoning designations and restrictions. 4. Clearly and comprehensively communicating any identified restrictions, potential issues, or implications to the client in writing. 5. Advising the client to seek independent professional advice, e.g., from a solicitor or surveyor, if the land use implications are complex or significant. Question 5. Analysis of a property agent's interaction with a landlord in Hong Kong who expresses a desire to rent their property only to tenants of a specific ethnic background. What is the most appropriate and legally compliant course of action for the agent? Option A. Suggests that while the agency cannot explicitly discriminate, they will try their best to find tenants who align with the landlord's implied preferences. Option B. Directly ask the landlord for more details about their preference to better understand their concerns and tailor the search accordingly. Option C. Politely explain that the agency adheres to strict anti-discrimination policies and will market the property to all eligible prospective tenants, focusing on objective property features and tenant qualifications. Option D. Agree to the landlord's request and actively seek out tenants who match the specified ethnic background. The correct answer is C. Politely explain that the agency adheres to strict anti-discrimination policies and will market the property to all eligible prospective tenants, focusing on objective property features and tenant qualifications. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a property agent to navigate a delicate situation involving a potential client's personal circumstances and a property listing. The agent must balance the client's stated preferences with their legal and ethical obligations under Hong Kong's anti-discrimination regulations, specifically concerning fair housing. Failure to do so could result in discriminatory practices, reputational damage, and legal repercussions. The challenge lies in interpreting the client's request and responding in a manner that is both commercially sound and legally compliant, without making assumptions or judgments based on protected characteristics. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves politely and professionally clarifying the client's requirements, while subtly reinforcing the agent's commitment to fair housing principles. This approach involves understanding the client's underlying needs for the property, e.g., proximity to amenities, quiet environment, without directly probing into or acting upon any potentially discriminatory intent. The agent should explain that all properties are available to all eligible buyers and that the agency adheres to strict anti-discrimination policies. This aligns with the Estate Agents Ordinance, Cap. 511, and its associated codes of conduct, which prohibit discrimination in the provision of services. By focusing on objective property features and the agency's commitment to equal opportunity, the agent upholds ethical standards and legal requirements. Incorrect approaches analysis. Directly asking the client if they have a preference regarding the ethnicity of potential tenants for a rental property is a clear violation of anti-discrimination principles. This approach assumes the client's intent is discriminatory and engages with it directly, potentially encouraging or validating such a stance. Fails to uphold the agent's duty to act impartially and ethically, and could be interpreted as facilitating discrimination, which is contrary to the spirit and letter of fair housing principles in Hong Kong. Agreeing to the client's request and actively seeking tenants of a specific ethnicity is a direct contravention of anti-discrimination laws. This action constitutes discriminatory practice in the provision of services. The agent would be actively participating in a discriminatory act, which carries significant legal penalties and ethical condemnation under Hong Kong law and professional codes of conduct. Suggesting that the agent will try their best to find tenants who fit the client's implied preference, without explicitly stating the agency's non-discriminatory policy, is a passive endorsement of potential discrimination. This approach avoids direct confrontation, but fails to actively counter the discriminatory sentiment. It creates ambiguity and could lead the client to believe that discriminatory practices are acceptable or will be accommodated, thereby undermining fair housing principles. Professional reasoning. Professionals in Hong Kong's real estate sector must adopt a proactive stance in upholding fair housing laws. When faced with requests that may indicate discriminatory intent, the decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the client's stated needs without judgment. 2. Identifying any potential conflict with anti-discrimination regulations. 3. Clearly and politely communicating the agency's commitment to fair housing and non-discrimination. 4. Focusing the discussion on objective property attributes and legal eligibility criteria for tenants or buyers. 5. Documenting the interaction to ensure transparency and accountability. This framework ensures that professional conduct remains ethical, legally compliant, and aligned with the principles of equal opportunity. Question 6. The review process indicates that a property agent in Hong Kong is handling the sale of a property located near a former industrial site. What is the best practice approach for the agent regarding potential environmental impacts? Options. A. Research publicly available information on the property's environmental history and location. Advise the client on potential environmental concerns, and ensure transparent disclosure of any material findings to prospective buyers. B. Assume that unless a specific environmental remediation order is in place for the property, environmental factors are not a material concern for the sale. C. Focus solely on marketing the property's positive attributes and leave all environmental due diligence to the prospective buyers. D. Downplay any potential environmental concerns to the client and buyers to ensure a quicker sale. Option A. Downplay any potential environmental concerns to the client and buyers to ensure a quicker sale. Option B. Focus solely on marketing the property's positive attributes and leave all environmental due diligence to the prospective buyers. Option C. Research publicly available information on the property's environmental history and location, advise the client on potential environmental concerns, and ensure transparent disclosure of any material findings to prospective buyers. Option D. Assume that unless a specific environmental remediation order is in place for the property, environmental factors are not a material concern for the sale. The correct answer is C. Research publicly available information on the property's environmental history and location, advise the client on potential environmental concerns, and ensure transparent disclosure of any material findings to prospective buyers. Explanation. The review process indicates a need to evaluate how a property agent in Hong Kong navigates environmental considerations during a property transaction. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the agent's duty to their client with the growing importance of environmental due diligence, which can impact property value and future liabilities. Hong Kong's regulatory landscape, while not as extensively prescriptive on environmental impact assessments for residential sales as some other jurisdictions, increasingly expects agents to be aware of and disclose material environmental factors that could affect a property's marketability or legal status. The correct approach involves proactively identifying and disclosing potential environmental concerns to the client and prospective buyers. This means the agent should research publicly available information regarding the property's location, such as proximity to industrial zones, historical land use, or any known environmental hazards reported by government agencies like the Environmental Protection Department, EPD. If such information suggests a potential issue, the agent should advise the client to obtain professional environmental assessments and ensure that any findings are transparently communicated to potential buyers. This aligns with the Estate Agents Authority (EA) Code of Practice, which mandates honesty, integrity, and the duty to act in the best interests of clients, including informing them of material facts that could influence their decision. Transparency regarding environmental factors is a material fact that can significantly impact a property's value and desirability. An incorrect approach would be to ignore potential environmental issues, assuming they are not explicitly regulated for standard property sales. This fails to uphold the duty of care and transparency expected of a licensed agent. For instance, failing to investigate or disclose known contamination risks in an area, even if not a direct breach of a specific environmental law for sales, would be a breach of the agent's ethical obligations under the EAA Code of Practice to provide accurate and complete information. Another incorrect approach is to downplay or conceal any identified environmental concerns to expedite a sale. This is unethical and potentially illegal, as it misleads buyers and could lead to future legal disputes and reputational damage. Such actions directly violate the EAA's principles of honesty and integrity. Finally, an approach that relies solely on the buyer to conduct their own environmental due diligence without any proactive disclosure from the agent is also professionally deficient. While buyers have a responsibility, agents have a duty to facilitate informed decision-making by highlighting known or reasonably discoverable material facts, including environmental considerations that might not be immediately apparent. Professionals should adopt a proactive and transparent approach. This involves staying informed about environmental regulations and best practices, conducting reasonable inquiries into potential environmental issues relevant to a property, and communicating any material findings clearly and honestly to all parties involved in the transaction. When in doubt, seeking advice from legal counsel or environmental consultants is a prudent step. Question 7. Performance analysis shows that a property salesperson in Hong Kong is assisting a client who wishes to sell their residential property. The client has provided a copy of their mortgage statement and stated they are the sole owner. What is the most appropriate course of action for the salesperson to ensure compliance with property rights and ownership regulations? Option A. Advise the seller to only present the mortgage statement to potential buyers, as it indicates their financial commitment to the property and implies ownership. Option B. Proceed with marketing the property based on the client's statement of sole ownership and the provided mortgage statement, assuming this is sufficient proof of ownership. Option C. Verify the exact nature of the seller's ownership interest by obtaining and reviewing the official land title document from the land registry, and then clearly communicate this verified ownership status to potential buyers. Option D. Inform potential buyers that the seller is the owner based on their statement and the mortgage document, without further investigation into the specific type of ownership. The correct answer is C. Verify the exact nature of the seller's ownership interest by obtaining and reviewing the official land title document from the land registry, and then clearly communicate this verified ownership status to potential buyers. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a salesperson to navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure transparency regarding property ownership, which is a cornerstone of property law and ethical conduct in Hong Kong. Misrepresenting or failing to disclose material facts about ownership can lead to significant legal repercussions and damage to professional reputation. Careful judgment is required to uphold the integrity of property transactions. The correct approach involves proactively verifying and clearly communicating the exact nature of the seller's ownership interest. This means confirming whether the seller holds the property in their sole name, as a joint tenant, or as a tenant in common, and understanding the implications of each for the sale. This approach is correct because it aligns with the Estate Agents Ordinance, Cap. 521, and its subsidiary legislation, which mandate that licensed estate agents must act honestly and with due diligence, and not mislead clients or potential purchasers. Specifically, Section 7(1)(a) of the Code of Practice for Estate Agents requires agents to act with integrity and competence, which includes ensuring accuracy in property information provided. Transparency about ownership is a fundamental aspect of this. An incorrect approach would be to assume the seller has full, unencumbered ownership based on their possession of the property or their statement alone, without independent verification. This fails to meet the due diligence requirements and could lead to the salesperson providing misleading information to a buyer, violating Section 7(1)(a) of the Code of Practice. Another incorrect approach would be to only disclose the seller's name without clarifying the specific type of ownership, e.g., sole owner, joint tenant, tenant in common. This lack of specificity can be misleading, as different ownership structures have different legal implications for the sale and the buyer's rights, potentially contravening the duty to provide accurate and complete information under the Code of Practice. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to advise the seller on how to present their ownership in a way that might obscure potential issues, such as suggesting they only provide a copy of a mortgage statement instead of the land title document. This constitutes actively participating in the misrepresentation of ownership and is a serious breach of ethical conduct and regulatory requirements, undermining the principle of honest dealings. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes verification and clear, accurate disclosure. This involves 1. Identifying the core information required nature of ownership. 2. Proactively seeking and verifying this information through official channels, e.g., land registry records. 3. Communicating the verified information clearly and comprehensively to all parties involved. 4. Documenting all communications and verifications to ensure accountability. Question 8. The performance metrics show a consistent trend of quick property sales for your agency in Hong Kong. A vendor instructs you to list their property, assuring you that there are no outstanding mortgages or charges registered against the title. However, your agency's internal policy, aligned with the Estate Agents Authority's guidelines, mandates verification of such claims for all new listings. What is the most appropriate course of action to uphold professional standards and comply with Hong Kong regulations? Option A. Trust the vendor's assurance and proceed with marketing the property, as a quick sale is beneficial for both the vendor and the agency. Option B. Inform the vendor that you will only list the property if they provide a formal legal declaration confirming the absence of any encumbrances, without conducting your own verification. Option C. Immediately initiate a title search and inquire with the land registry to confirm the absence of any registered mortgages or charges before proceeding with marketing the property. Option D. Market the property but include a disclaimer stating that the information regarding encumbrances is provided by the vendor and has not been independently verified. Correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a title search and inquire with the land registry to confirm the absence of any registered mortgages or charges before proceeding with marketing the property. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a salesperson to navigate the delicate balance between securing a sale and ensuring the integrity of the contractual process, particularly when faced with a client's potentially misleading information. The salesperson must uphold their duty of care and professional conduct as mandated by the Estate Agents Ordinance, Cap. 521, and its subsidiary legislation in Hong Kong. The best professional approach involves a thorough verification of all material facts presented by the client, especially those that form the basis of the property's value and marketability. This includes diligently confirming the existence and terms of any existing encumbrances or charges on the property by proactively investigating the property's title and any associated financial obligations. The salesperson acts in accordance with their fiduciary duty to both the vendor and potential purchasers, ensuring transparency and preventing future disputes. This aligns with the Estate Agents Authority's guidelines on professional conduct, which emphasize honesty, integrity, and the avoidance of misrepresentation. An approach that involves accepting the client's assurance without independent verification is professionally unacceptable. This failure to exercise due diligence constitutes a breach of the salesperson's duty of care and could lead to misrepresentation to potential buyers, violating Section 13 of the Estate Agents Ordinance, which prohibits false or misleading statements. Furthermore, it undermines the principle of good faith essential in property transactions. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to proceed with marketing the property without disclosing the potential for undisclosed encumbrances. This omission is a direct contravention of the duty to provide accurate information and can lead to significant legal complications for all parties involved, including the salesperson and their agency. It also violates the ethical obligation to act with integrity and avoid misleading potential purchasers. Finally, an approach that prioritizes securing the listing and sale above all else, even at the expense of thorough due diligence, is ethically and regulatorily flawed. This demonstrates a lack of professionalism and a disregard for the legal framework governing property transactions in Hong Kong. It can result in severe penalties for the salesperson and their agency, including disciplinary action by the Estate Agents Authority. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes verification and transparency. This involves 1. Identifying all material facts presented by the client. 2. Assessing the reliability of these facts and determining the need for independent verification. 3. Conducting necessary due diligence, including title searches and inquiries about encumbrances. 4. Communicating all verified information accurately and transparently to all parties. 5. Seeking legal advice if any complexities or potential issues arise. Question 9. Investigation of a loan application for a client in Hong Kong reveals that the client has provided substantial personal guarantees and has a history of successful, albeit high-risk, investments. However, the detailed financial projections for the proposed business venture appear overly optimistic and lack robust supporting evidence. What is the most appropriate course of action for the salesperson involved in the loan underwriting process? Option A. Approve the loan, but advise the client to adjust their business projection to appear more conservative to satisfy internal review. Option B. Reject the loan application outright due to the unconvincing financial projections, without further discussion or exploration of alternative risk mitigation strategies with the client. Option C. Proceed with the loan approval, documenting the client's strong personal guarantees and investment history as mitigating factors, while also clearly noting the optimistic projections and recommending enhanced monitoring post-approval. Option D. Approve the loan immediately based on the client's strong personal guarantees and past investment success, assuming the projections will materialize. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the loan approval, documenting the client's strong personal guarantees and investment history as mitigating factors, while also clearly noting the optimistic projections and recommending enhanced monitoring post-approval. Explanation: investigation of loan underwriting and approval processes in Hong Kong presents a significant professional challenge due to the inherent tension between achieving business objectives and upholding stringent regulatory standards designed to protect investors and maintain market integrity. Salespersons must navigate complex client needs, institutional pressures, and a detailed legal framework. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all loan applications are assessed fairly, transparently, and in compliance with the Securities and Futures Commission (SFC) regulations. The best approach involves a thorough and documented assessment of the borrower's financial standing and the loan's purpose, ensuring it aligns with the institution's risk appetite and regulatory requirements. This includes verifying all submitted documentation, conducting independent credit checks, and clearly articulating the rationale for approval or rejection in the loan file. This method is correct because it directly addresses the core principles of responsible lending and compliance mandated by the SFC. It demonstrates due diligence, mitigates the risk of facilitating illicit activities, and provides a clear audit trail, which is crucial for regulatory scrutiny. Adherence to these practices ensures that the salesperson acts in the best interest of both the client and the financial institution, while also fulfilling their legal and ethical obligations, an approach that relies heavily on the borrower's personal relationship with the salesperson or the perceived potential for future business, without a rigorous independent assessment of financial capacity, is professionally unacceptable. This failure to conduct due diligence exposes the institution to significant credit risk and potentially violates anti-money laundering (AML) and counter-terrorist financing (CTF) regulations, as it bypasses essential checks designed to identify suspicious transactions. Another unacceptable approach involves approving a loan based solely on the borrower's stated intention to invest in a particular product, without independently verifying the viability or suitability of that investment for the borrower's financial situation. This can lead to mis-selling and breaches of conduct requirements, as the salesperson may be seen as facilitating a loan for an inappropriate purpose, thereby failing to act with due skill, care, and diligence. Finally, approving a loan without a clear and documented rationale, or by overlooking discrepancies in the provided financial information, is also professionally unsound. This lack of transparency and diligence undermines the integrity of the underwriting process and can lead to regulatory sanctions if an investigation reveals a failure to adhere to established procedures or a disregard for risk management principles. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based evaluation of each loan application. This framework should include 1. Comprehensive information gathering and verification. 2. Objective risk assessment against established criteria. 3. Clear documentation of the decision-making process. And 4. Adherence to internal policies and external regulations. This structured approach ensures consistency, fairness, and compliance, thereby safeguarding against potential ethical breaches and regulatory violations. Question 10. Comparative studies suggest that property managers often face dilemmas balancing immediate cost-effectiveness with long-term property preservation. In Hong Kong, a salesperson managing a residential property for a client discovers a minor water leak from an upstairs bathroom into the unit below. The plumber provides 2 quotes. Option A is a quick patch-up for HK $2,000, with a warning that it might not be a permanent solution. Option B is a more comprehensive repair of the pipe and surrounding area for HK $8,000, which the plumber guarantees will resolve the issue long-term. The salesperson's client is concerned about immediate expenses. If the salesperson advises the client to proceed with option A, and the leak worsens within 6 months, causing HK $15,000 and further damage to the unit below and requiring the HK $8,000 repair anyway, what is the most appropriate calculation to determine the total financial impact of the initial decision, considering the additional damage and the eventual necessary repair? Option A. The total financial impact is the cost of the initial cheap repair plus the damage caused to the lower unit. HK $2,000 plus HK $15,000 equals HK $17,000. Option B. The total financial impact is solely the cost of the comprehensive repair, as the initial repair was a failed attempt. HK $8,000. Option C. The total financial impact is the sum of the initial cheap repair, the subsequent comprehensive repair, and the damage caused to the lower unit. HK $2,000 plus HK $8,000 plus HK $15,000 equals HK $25,000. Option D. The total financial impact is the cost of the comprehensive repair plus the damage caused to the lower unit, ignoring the initial cheap repair. HK $8,000 plus HK $15,000 equals HK $23,000. The correct answer is C. The total financial impact is the sum of the initial cheap repair, the subsequent comprehensive repair, and the damage caused to the lower unit. HK $2,000 plus HK $8,000 plus HK $15,000 equals HK $25,000. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in property management, balancing the financial interests of the owner with the need for essential maintenance to preserve the property's value and ensure tenant safety. The salesperson must accurately assess the situation, understand the financial implications of different repair options, and communicate effectively with the owner, all while adhering to their professional obligations under Hong Kong property law and ethical guidelines. The pressure to minimize immediate costs can conflict with long-term property health and tenant satisfaction, requiring a nuanced decision-making process. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves a thorough assessment of the leak's severity, obtaining detailed quotes for both immediate repair and potential long-term solutions, and presenting a clear, data-driven comparison to the owner. This includes outlining the potential risks of delaying more comprehensive repairs, such as increased water damage, mold growth, and tenant dissatisfaction, which could lead to legal disputes or loss of rental income. This aligns with the Estate Agents Ordinance, Cap. 511, and its subsidiary legislation, which mandate that licensed persons act with honesty and diligence, and in the best interests of their clients. Ethically, this demonstrates transparency and professional competence, enabling the owner to make an informed decision based on a comprehensive understanding of the costs, benefits, and risks. Incorrect approach is analysis. Opting for the cheapest immediate fix without a proper assessment of the underlying cause or potential for future damage is professionally negligent. This approach prioritizes short-term cost savings over the long-term integrity of the property and could violate the duty of care owed to the owner. It fails to consider the potential for escalating repair costs and reputational damage if the problem recurs or worsens. Recommending the most expensive solution without exploring more cost-effective alternatives or providing a clear justification based on long-term benefits is also problematic. This could be seen as an attempt to inflate costs or may not be in the owner's best financial interest if a less costly but equally effective solution exists. Furthermore, delaying the recommendation to the owner until the leak causes significant damage is a clear breach of professional duty and could expose the owner to substantial financial and legal liabilities. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a framework that prioritizes informed decision-making. This involves 1. Thorough investigation, understand the problem completely. 2. Data gathering, obtain multiple detailed quotes and expert opinions. 3. Risk assessment, evaluate the consequences of different actions including inaction. 4. Cost-benefit analysis, compare immediate costs against long-term implications. 5. Transparent communication, present all findings and options clearly to the client, empowering them to make an informed choice. 6. Regulatory compliance, ensure all actions adhere to relevant laws and ethical codes. Question 11. The investigation demonstrates that a property salesperson in Hong Kong is advising a client on the sale of their residential property. While the client is eager to sell quickly, the salesperson has observed recent economic indicators in Hong Kong suggesting a potential slowdown in the property market, including rising interest rates and a decrease in transaction volumes. What is the most professional and ethically sound approach for the salesperson to take in advising their client? Option A. Conduct a thorough analysis of current Hong Kong economic indicators and their potential impact on the property market, then present these findings objectively to the client, outlining both potential risks and opportunities, and advising them on strategies to navigate the current market conditions. Option B. Advise the client that current economic concerns are temporary and unlikely to significantly affect property values, focusing primarily on the client's desire for a quick sale without delving deeply into economic analysis. Option C. Suggest that the client delay the sale until economic conditions in Hong Kong show clear signs of improvement, even if this conflicts with the client's immediate need to sell. Option D. Emphasize the historical trend of property price appreciation in Hong Kong and assure the client that the market will likely recover quickly, encouraging them to proceed with the sale based on past performance. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough analysis of current Hong Kong economic indicators and their potential impact on the property market, then present these findings objectively to the client, outlining both potential risks and opportunities, and advising them on strategies to navigate the current market conditions. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a real estate salesperson in Hong Kong to balance their fiduciary duty to their client with the broader economic realities that influence property values. The salesperson must exercise sound judgment to advise their client effectively without making unsubstantiated claims or engaging in practices that could mislead. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and communicating complex economic data in a way that is understandable and actionable for the client, while adhering to the strict ethical and regulatory standards governing real estate professionals in Hong Kong. The best approach involves a thorough, data-driven analysis of relevant Hong Kong economic indicators and their potential impact on the property market, followed by a clear, objective presentation of these findings to the client. This approach is correct because it aligns with the Estate Agents Ordinance, Cap. 511, and its subsidiary regulations, which mandate honesty, integrity, and competence in the conduct of estate agents. Specifically, it upholds the duty to act in the client's best interest by providing informed advice based on credible economic analysis, rather than speculation or personal bias. This method ensures that the client can make an informed decision based on a realistic assessment of market conditions and potential risks and opportunities. An approach that focuses solely on past price appreciation without considering current economic headwinds is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the dynamic nature of the real estate market. It can lead to misrepresentation of future prospects and potentially expose the client to undue risk, violating the duty of care and the principle of providing accurate information as required by the estate agent's authorities' guidelines. Another unacceptable approach is to dismiss current economic concerns as temporary or insignificant, without substantiating this view with robust economic analysis. This demonstrates a potential bias or an unwillingness to engage with potentially negative market signals, which can be detrimental to the client's decision-making process. It risks creating a false sense of security and failing to adequately prepare the client for potential market downturns, thereby breaching the duty to act with reasonable skill and care. Finally, an approach that prioritizes securing a quick sale over providing comprehensive advice, perhaps by downplaying economic risks to encourage immediate action, is ethically and regulatorily flawed. This prioritizes the salesperson's commission over the client's best interests, a direct contravention of fiduciary duties and the ethical standards expected of licensed agents in Hong Kong. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the client's objectives. This is followed by a comprehensive research phase, gathering and analyzing relevant economic data specific to Hong Kong, such as interest rate trends, inflation, employment figures, and government housing policies. The next step involves synthesizing this information into clear, objective advice, presenting both potential upsides and downsides to the client. Finally, the salesperson should facilitate an informed decision by the client, ensuring they fully comprehend the implications of the economic factors discussed. Question 12. A licensed property salesperson in Hong Kong is tasked with advising a client on the potential sale price of a standard 3-bedroom apartment in a well-established residential estate. The apartment is intended for owner occupation and has been on the market for several years with no significant renovations. Considering the typical characteristics of such a property and the prevailing market conditions, which valuation method would be most appropriate for the salesperson to employ to provide a realistic estimate of its market value? Option A, comparative market analysis. Option B, cost approach. Option C, a combination of all three methods without specific justification for each. Option D, income approach. The correct answer is A, comparative market analysis. Explanation, scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a licensed salesperson in Hong Kong because it requires them to select the most appropriate valuation method for a property based on its specific characteristics and intended use, while adhering to the Hong Kong Estate Agent Ordinance and its associated practice notes. This application of a valuation method can lead to inaccurate property appraisals, potentially causing financial harm to clients and reputational damage to the salesperson and their agency. The salesperson must demonstrate a nuanced understanding of each method's strengths and weaknesses in different contexts, moving beyond a superficial knowledge of their definitions. Correct approach analysis. The most appropriate approach in this scenario is the comparative market analysis. This method is best suited for residential properties, particularly those that are relatively standard and have a sufficient number of comparable recent sales in the immediate vicinity. It involves analyzing recent sales of similar properties, adjusting for differences in features, location, and condition. This approach is directly aligned with the principles of fair market value as understood in the Hong Kong property market, and is implicitly supported by the Estate Agents Ordinance's requirement for agents to act with due skill, care, and diligence, which includes providing accurate and relevant information to clients. The practice notes often emphasize the importance of using up-to-date and relevant comparable data, which is the cornerstone of this method. Incorrect approaches analysis. Using the income approach would be inappropriate and potentially misleading for a typical residential property intended for owner occupation. This method is primarily designed for investment properties where rental income is the primary driver of value. Applying it to a residential property without a clear rental income stream would require making speculative assumptions about potential rental yields, which are not grounded in the property's current use or market reality. This could lead to an inflated or deflated valuation, failing to meet the standard of care expected under the Estate Agents Ordinance. The cost approach, which estimates the cost to replace or reproduce the property, less depreciation, is generally most suitable for unique properties, new constructions, or properties with significant special features where comparable sales data is scarce. For a standard residential property, it is often less reliable than the comparative market analysis because it does not directly reflect current market demand and buyer preferences, which are crucial determinants of value in Hong Kong's dynamic property market. Relying solely on the cost to build, without considering what a buyer is willing to pay in the current market, can result in a valuation that is not reflective of its true market worth, potentially violating the duty to provide accurate advice. Professional reasoning. Professionals in Hong Kong should adopt a systematic approach when selecting a valuation method. First, they must thoroughly understand the property's type, intended use, and market context. Second, they should assess the availability and reliability of data required for each valuation method. For standard residential properties, the comparative market analysis is typically the most direct and reliable method. If the property is an investment or has unique characteristics, then the income or cost approach, respectively, might be considered, but always with a critical evaluation of their applicability and data limitations. The ultimate goal is to provide a valuation that is as accurate and representative of the current market as possible, fulfilling the ethical and legal obligations to clients under the Hong Kong Estate Agents Ordinance. Question 13. Benchmark analysis indicates that a property agent in Hong Kong is approached by a prospective buyer who is interested in a property currently listed by the same agency. The agent believes they can facilitate a smooth transaction by representing both parties. What is the most appropriate course of action for the agent to ensure compliance with regulatory requirements and ethical standards? Option A. Advise the buyer to make an offer and then inform the seller of the offer, acting solely in the buyer's interest to secure the best possible price for them. Option B. Inform the seller that they have a buyer interested and suggest the seller consider the offer without disclosing the buyer's identity or the agent's dual representation. Option C. Obtain explicit written consent from both the seller and the buyer after fully disclosing the potential conflicts of interest and the agent's role in a dual agency capacity. Option D. Proceed with representing both parties, assuming that facilitating the sale is in everyone's best interest, and disclose the dual agency status only after the offer is accepted. The correct answer is C. Obtain explicit written consent from both the seller and the buyer after fully disclosing the potential conflicts of interest and the agent's role in a dual agency capacity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves a potential conflict of interest inherent in dual agency. A property agent in Hong Kong owes fiduciary duties to their client, S. When representing both the seller and the buyer in the same transaction, the agent must navigate competing interests, ensuring fair treatment and full disclosure to both parties. Failure to do so can lead to breaches of trust, regulatory sanctions under the Estate Agents Ordinance, Cap. 503, and its subsidiary legislation, and damage to the agent's reputation. Careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards and legal obligations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice is to obtain explicit written consent from both the seller and the buyer before acting as a dual agent. This approach involves clearly informing both parties of the agent's role, the potential conflicts of interest that may arise, and the limitations on the agent's ability to advocate exclusively for either party. The agent must then act impartially, disclose all material facts relevant to the transaction to both parties, and ensure that neither party is disadvantaged. This aligns with the Estate Agents Authority (EA) Code of Practice, which emphasizes honesty, integrity, and the duty to act in the best interests of clients, while also permitting dual agency under strict conditions of informed consent and transparency. Incorrect approach is analysis. Acting as a dual agent without obtaining prior written consent from both parties is a direct violation of regulatory requirements and ethical principles. This approach fails to uphold the duty of loyalty and full disclosure to each client. It creates an undisclosed conflict of interest, potentially leading to one party receiving less favorable terms or incomplete information. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize the interests of one party over the other, even with consent. This breaches the fiduciary duty owed to the disadvantaged party and undermines the principle of impartiality required in dual agency. Furthermore, failing to disclose all material facts about the property or the buyer's financial capacity to the respective parties, even if the agent believes it is for their own good, constitutes a serious ethical and regulatory breach. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive risk assessment approach. When considering dual agency, the first step is to identify the potential for conflicts of interest. If a conflict exists, the agent must assess whether it can be managed ethically and legally. This involves a thorough understanding of the Estate Agents Ordinance and the EAA Code of Practice. The agent should then communicate transparently with both potential clients, explaining the implications of dual agency and seeking informed, written consent. If at any point the agent feels they cannot act impartially or fulfill their duties to both parties, they should decline to act as a dual agent and recommend that each party seek independent representation. Question 14. Regulatory review indicates that a landlord in Hong Kong has instructed their estate agent to assist in the eviction of a tenant whose lease has expired and who has refused to vacate the premises. The landlord is expressing frustration and is eager to regain possession of the property quickly. What is the most appropriate course of action for the estate salesperson to advise the landlord? Option A. Advise the landlord to cease providing essential services like water and electricity to the property to make it uninhabitable for the tenant. Option B. Advise the landlord that the only legal method to evict a tenant in Hong Kong is through obtaining a court order and recommend engaging legal counsel to initiate the necessary proceedings. Option C. Recommend that the landlord personally confront the tenant and verbally threaten them with legal action if they do not vacate immediately without formal court involvement. Option D. Suggest the landlord change the locks to the property to prevent the tenant from entering, thereby forcing them to leave. The correct answer is B. Advise the landlord that the only legal method to evict a tenant in Hong Kong is through obtaining a court order and recommend engaging legal counsel to initiate the necessary proceedings. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because a salesperson, acting as an agent for a landlord, must navigate the legal complexities of the eviction process in Hong Kong while upholding their duty to their client and adhering to the Estate Agents Ordinance, Cap. 511, and its subsidiary legislation. Missteps can lead to legal repercussions for the landlord, the agency, and the salesperson, as well as damage to professional reputation. The salesperson must balance the landlord's objectives with the tenant's rights and the prescribed legal procedures. The correct approach involves diligently advising the landlord on the statutory requirements for eviction under Hong Kong law, emphasizing the necessity of obtaining a court order. This includes explaining that self-help remedies or informal attempts to remove a tenant are unlawful and can result in significant penalties. The salesperson should guide the landlord through the process of engaging legal counsel to initiate formal proceedings, such as a landlord and tenant summons, if the tenant fails to vacate after the lease expires or breaches the tenancy agreement. This aligns with the estate agent's authority, SQE Code of Practice, which mandates that licensed persons act honestly and with due diligence, and not engage in or advise on illegal activities. An incorrect approach would be to suggest or facilitate any action that bypasses the legal eviction process. For instance, advising the landlord to change the locks or cut off utilities to force the tenant out is a direct violation of the law and the EAA's ethical guidelines. Such actions constitute illegal eviction and can lead to criminal charges and severe penalties for all involved. Another incorrect approach would be to downplay the legal requirements and encourage the landlord to rely on informal persuasion or threats, as this fails to provide proper professional advice and could expose both the landlord and the agency to liability. Furthermore, failing to inform the landlord of the tenant's legal protections and the landlord's obligations under the lease and Hong Kong tenancy law demonstrates a lack of due diligence and professional competence. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the specific legal framework governing landlord-tenant relationships in Hong Kong. They must then clearly communicate these legal obligations and procedures to their clients, advising them to seek professional legal assistance for formal eviction proceedings. The salesperson's role is to facilitate the process by providing accurate information and guidance within the bounds of the law, not to circumvent it. Question 15. Consider a scenario where a licensed salesperson in Hong Kong is approached by a developer to market a newly established real estate investment trust REIT that will primarily invest in commercial properties located in mainland China. The developer provides marketing materials that highlight potential high yields and capital appreciation, but offer limited detail on the specific regulatory framework governing such cross-border REIT investments in Hong Kong and the underlying property management structure. What is the most prudent course of action for the salesperson to ensure compliance with Hong Kong's regulatory requirements? Option A. Rely solely on the developer's assurances and the information presented in their marketing materials, as they are the primary source of information about the REIT. Option B. Proactively contact the Securities and Futures Commission, SFC, and the REIT management company to obtain detailed information on the specific disclosure requirements, regulatory approvals, and any Hong Kong-specific guidelines applicable to this REIT before commencing any marketing activities. Option C. Begin marketing the REIT immediately, focusing on the potential returns, and inform potential investors that they should conduct their own independent research on the regulatory aspects. Option D. Proceed with marketing the REIT based on the provided materials, assuming that general disclosure requirements for listed securities are sufficient, and address any investor queries as they arise. The correct answer is B. Proactively contact the Securities and Futures Commission, SFC, and the REIT management company to obtain detailed information on the specific disclosure requirements, regulatory approvals, and any Hong Kong-specific guidelines applicable to this REIT before commencing any marketing activities. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a licensed salesperson in Hong Kong to navigate the complexities of real estate investment trusts REIT, while adhering to strict regulatory requirements designed to protect investors. The salesperson must ensure they are providing accurate and compliant information, especially when dealing with a product that, while publicly traded, has specific disclosure and suitability obligations. The core challenge lies in balancing the promotion of investment opportunities with the absolute necessity of regulatory compliance and investor protection under Hong Kong law. The best approach involves proactively seeking clarification from the SFC and the REIT management company regarding the specific disclosure requirements for the new REIT. This demonstrates a commitment to understanding and complying with Hong Kong's regulatory framework for REIT, as outlined in the Securities and Futures Ordinance, SFO, and relevant SFC guidelines. By engaging directly with the regulators and the issuer, salesperson ensures they are equipped with the most accurate and up-to-date information, thereby fulfilling their duty of care and avoiding potential misrepresentations. This proactive stance aligns with the SFC's emphasis on investor protection and the need for licensed persons to act with due diligence and integrity. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the information provided by the rate developer without independent verification or seeking regulatory guidance. This fails to acknowledge the potential for incomplete or biased information and neglects the salesperson's responsibility to ensure compliance with Hong Kong-specific regulations governing the marketing and sale of rate. Such an approach could lead to misrepresentations and breaches of the SFO. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that because rate are publicly traded, the same disclosure standards as for other listed securities apply without considering any specific rate regulations. While there are overlaps, Hong Kong has specific provisions and guidelines for rate that must be adhered to, particularly concerning their structure, underlying assets, and distribution policies. Failing to account for these specific requirements is a regulatory oversight. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to proceed with marketing the rate based on general knowledge of investment products, without confirming the specific regulatory approvals and disclosures pertinent to this particular rate in Hong Kong. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to meet the professional standards expected of a licensed salesperson operating under the SFC's purview. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes regulatory compliance and investor protection. This involves understanding the specific product being offered, identifying all relevant regulatory requirements, including those specific to rate in Hong Kong, seeking clarification from regulators or the issuer when in doubt, and ensuring all marketing materials and advice are accurate, complete, and compliant with the SFO and SFC guidelines. Question 16. Upon reviewing a client's financial profile and investment goals in Hong Kong, a licensed salesperson identifies a potential need for flexible and rapid property acquisition. The client expresses interest in exploring financing options beyond traditional bank mortgages. Considering the specific regulatory environment in Hong Kong, which of the following represents the most prudent and compliant course of action for the salesperson when discussing hard money loans and seller financing? Option A. Conduct a thorough assessment of the client's financial capacity and risk tolerance, and provide a detailed explanation of the terms, benefits, and significant risks of both hard money loans and seller financing, emphasizing the need for independent legal and financial advice. Option B. Present seller financing as a straightforward solution, focusing on the potential for a more personalized agreement, but omitting details about the seller potentially retaining a security interest in the property. Option C. Highlight the flexibility offered by both hard money loans and seller financing as the main selling points, downplaying the associated risks to encourage a quicker decision from the client. Option D. Recommend hard money loans as a primary option due to their speed of approval, without extensively detailing the higher interest rates and shorter repayment terms, assuming the client is aware of these common characteristics. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough assessment of the client's financial capacity and risk tolerance, and provide a detailed explanation of the terms, benefits, and significant risks of both hard money loans and seller financing, emphasizing the need for independent legal and financial advice. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a licensed salesperson in Hong Kong to navigate complex financing options for a client while adhering to strict regulatory requirements and ethical obligations. The salesperson must ensure the client fully understands the risks and implications of each financing method, particularly those that are less conventional or carry higher risk profiles, such as hard money loans and seller financing. The primary challenge lies in balancing the client's potential desire for quick or flexible financing with the salesperson's duty to provide suitable advice and prevent misrepresentation or undue risk. The best approach involves a thorough assessment of the client's financial situation, risk tolerance, and investment objectives, followed by a clear and comprehensive explanation of the characteristics, benefits, and significant risks associated with both hard money loans and seller financing. This includes detailing the typically higher interest rates and shorter repayment terms of hard money loans, and the potential for the seller to retain a security interest in the property with seller financing. The salesperson must ensure the client understands that these options may not be suitable for all investors, and that independent financial and legal advice should be sought. This aligns with the Securities and Futures Commission (SFC) Code of Conduct, which mandates that licensed persons must act honestly, fairly, and in the best interests of their clients, and ensure that clients are adequately informed about the products and services offered. An incorrect approach would be to recommend hard money loans solely based on the client's expressed need for rapid acquisition of property, without adequately disclosing the associated high costs and short repayment periods, or failing to assess if this aligns with the client's overall financial capacity and long-term investment strategy. This would violate the duty to act in the client's best interests and could lead to the client taking on unsustainable debt. Another incorrect approach would be to present seller financing as a simple alternative without highlighting the potential complexities, such as the seller retaining a lien on the property, or the need for independent legal review of the financing agreement. This omission of crucial information could mislead the client about the true nature of the transaction and their rights and obligations. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to focus only on the potential benefits of these financing options, such as speed or flexibility, without providing a balanced view that includes the substantial risks and potential downsides. This selective disclosure is a breach of the duty to provide fair and balanced information and could lead to the client making an uninformed decision. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes client understanding and suitability. This involves 1. Active listening to understand the client's needs and constraints. 2. Conducting a comprehensive client due diligence to assess their financial standing and risk appetite. 3. Providing clear, unbiased, and complete information about all available financing options, including their advantages and disadvantages. 4. Recommending options that are demonstrably suitable for the client's circumstances. 5. Encouraging the client to seek independent professional advice, legal and financial, before committing to any transaction. 6. Documenting all advice and client communications thoroughly. Question 17. When evaluating a client's mortgage application in Hong Kong, where a higher loan-to-value ratio is required, what is the most responsible approach for a licensed salesperson to take regarding the explanation of private mortgage insurance, PMI? Option A. Emphasize that PMI is a one-time fee that is automatically removed once the loan-to-value ratio decreases sufficiently over time. Option B. Explain PMI as a form of life insurance that protects the borrower in case of unforeseen circumstances, without detailing its cost or cancellation terms. Option C. Provide a detailed explanation of PMI, including its purpose, the ongoing costs, the conditions for its eventual cancellation, and its impact on the total repayment amount, ensuring the client understands these aspects. Option D. Briefly mention PMI as a standard requirement for higher loan-to-value mortgages, focusing primarily on the approval of the mortgage itself. The correct answer is C. Provide a detailed explanation of PMI, including its purpose, the ongoing costs, the conditions for its eventual cancellation, and its impact on the total repayment amount, ensuring the client understands these aspects. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a salesperson to navigate the complexities of a financial product that, while potentially beneficial, carries inherent risks and specific regulatory disclosure requirements. The salesperson must balance the client's immediate need for a mortgage with their fiduciary duty to ensure the client fully understands the implications of private mortgage insurance, PMI, in Hong Kong. Misrepresenting or downplaying the costs and conditions of PMI can lead to significant client dissatisfaction, financial detriment, and regulatory breaches. Careful judgment is required to ensure transparency and client suitability. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves a comprehensive explanation of PMI, including its purpose, the ongoing costs associated with it, the conditions under which it can eventually be canceled, and its impact on the overall mortgage repayment. This approach aligns with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority (HKMA) guidelines and the Code of Conduct for persons licensed by or registered with the Securities and Futures Commission (SFC), which emphasize the importance of suitability, fair dealing, and providing clients with sufficient information to make informed decisions. Specifically, the salesperson must ensure the client understands that PMI is an additional cost, not a substitute for a larger down payment, and that there are specific criteria to be met for its removal, which may involve future property valuations and loan-to-value ratios. This thoroughness upholds the principle of acting in the client's best interests. Incorrect approach is analysis, focusing solely on the immediate benefit of securing a mortgage without detailing the long-term financial implications of PMI is a regulatory failure. This approach neglects the SFC's and HKMA emphasis on full disclosure and suitability, failing to explain the cancellation conditions of PMI, such as the need for a favorable property valuation or a reduction in the loan-to-value ratio, misleads the client into believing the cost is permanent or easily removable, which is ethically unsound and potentially breaches fair dealing principles. Presenting PMI as a mandatory or unavoidable component of all mortgages, without clarifying its specific triggers and purpose, i.e., protecting the lender when the loan-to-value ratio is high, is also misleading. This misrepresentation can lead to a client entering into a financial commitment they do not fully comprehend, violating the duty of care owed to the client. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a client-centric approach, prioritizing understanding and suitability over immediate transaction closure. This involves a structured process of needs assessment, product explanation with full disclosure of all associated costs and conditions, risk assessment, and confirmation of client comprehension. When discussing products like PMI, it is crucial to explain not just what it is, but also why it is required in specific circumstances, its ongoing financial impact, and the pathways to its eventual removal. This ensures that clients are empowered to make informed decisions that align with their financial capacity and long-term goals, thereby adhering to regulatory expectations and ethical standards. Question: when evaluating a client's mortgage application in Hong Kong, where a higher loan-to-value ratio is required, what is the most responsible approach for a licensed salesperson to take regarding the explanation of private mortgage insurance, PMI? Options: A. Provide a detailed explanation of PMI, including its purpose, the ongoing costs, the conditions for its eventual cancellation, and its impact on the total repayment amount, ensuring the client understands these aspects. B. Briefly mention PMI as a standard requirement for higher loan-to-value mortgages, focusing primarily on the approval of the mortgage itself. C. Emphasize that PMI is a one-time fee that is automatically removed once the loan-to-value ratio decreases sufficiently over time. D. Explain PMI as a form of life insurance that protects the borrower in case of unforeseen circumstances, without detailing its cost or cancellation terms. Question 18. The analysis reveals that a client in Hong Kong is seeking advice on a mortgage for their first property purchase. They have a stable income, but express significant concern about unpredictable monthly payments. They are also aware that adjustable-rate mortgages often have lower initial rates compared to fixed-rate options. Considering the client's stated concerns and the regulatory environment in Hong Kong, which approach best aligns with professional and ethical obligations? Option A. Recommend a fixed-rate mortgage, explaining how it provides payment certainty and protects against future interest rate hikes, thereby aligning with the client's expressed concern about unpredictable payments. Option B. Recommend the mortgage product that offers the highest commission to the salesperson, as this incentivizes providing a sale. Option C. Recommend an adjustable-rate mortgage, highlighting its lower initial interest rate as a primary benefit, and assuming the client will manage any future payment increases. Option D. Recommend an interest-only mortgage, focusing on the potential for lower immediate cash outflow, without a detailed discussion of the principal repayment strategy at the end of the term. The correct answer is A. Recommend a fixed-rate mortgage, explaining how it provides payment certainty and protects against future interest rate hikes, thereby aligning with the client's expressed concern about unpredictable payments. Explanation: the analysis reveals a common scenario in Hong Kong's financial advisory landscape, where a salesperson must guide a client through complex mortgage product choices. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing the client's financial situation, risk tolerance, and future financial goals to recommend a mortgage product that aligns with their best interests, while adhering to the Hong Kong Monetary Authority's (HKMA) regulatory requirements and the Securities and Futures Commission's (SFC) conduct requirements for licensed persons. Misalignment can lead to significant financial hardship for the client and regulatory breaches for the salesperson. The best professional approach involves a comprehensive fact-finding process to understand the client's income stability, employment prospects, existing debts, and their capacity to manage potential payment fluctuations. This approach prioritizes the client's long-term financial well-being by matching the mortgage product's characteristics to their individual circumstances. Specifically, recommending a fixed-rate mortgage when a client expresses a strong aversion to payment uncertainty and has a stable income, or an adjustable-rate mortgage when the client understands and can absorb potential rate increases and seeks lower initial payments, demonstrates a commitment to suitability and client protection. This aligns with the SFC's Code of Conduct, which mandates that licensed persons must act honestly, fairly, and in the best interests of their clients, and the HKMA guidelines on responsible lending and mortgage affordability assessments. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the initial lower interest rate of an adjustable-rate mortgage, without thoroughly explaining the risks of potential future payment increases to a client who has indicated a preference for payment predictability. This fails to meet the duty of care and suitability obligations, potentially exposing the client to undue financial stress. Another incorrect approach is to recommend an interest-only mortgage without a clear and robust repayment strategy for the principal amount at the end of the term, especially if the client's financial projections do not adequately support a lump sum repayment or a subsequent mortgage refinancing. This contravenes responsible lending principles and could lead to a default situation. Finally, pushing a mortgage product based on the salesperson's commission structure rather than the client's needs is a clear breach of ethical conduct and regulatory requirements, prioritizing personal gain over client welfare. Professional reasoning in such situations requires a structured approach. First, conduct thorough client due diligence to understand their financial profile and objectives. Second, clearly explain the features, benefits, and risks of each mortgage type, using plain language. Third, assess the suitability of each product against the client's profile. And fourth, document the entire process, including the client's understanding and decision-making. Question 19. The evaluation methodology shows that a property agent in Hong Kong is marketing a site for a new commercial development. The developer claims that there are no restrictive covenants on the land that would impede the proposed construction. What is the most prudent and legally compliant course of action for the property agent to take? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the government lease, land search records, and any registered encumbrances to identify and assess the impact of any restrictive covenants or conditions. Option B. Assume that any existing covenants are outdated and no longer legally binding without further investigation. Option C. Market the property for the proposed development, highlighting its potential, while deferring any detailed covenant investigation until a sale is imminent. Option D. Accept the developer's verbal assurance that no restrictive covenants exist and proceed with marketing the property. Correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the government lease, land search records, and any registered encumbrances to identify and assess the impact of any restrictive covenants or conditions. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that assessing the impact of a proposed development on existing property rights and covenants is a critical and professionally challenging aspect of real estate transactions in Hong Kong. This scenario requires careful judgment due to the potential for significant financial and legal repercussions for all parties involved if these impacts are not thoroughly understood and addressed. Mismanagement can lead to disputes, litigation, and a failure to meet statutory obligations. The best professional approach involves a comprehensive review of all relevant legal documents, including the government lease, any registered encumbrances, and building plans, to identify any restrictive covenants or conditions that might affect the proposed development. This proactive and meticulous examination ensures that potential conflicts are identified early, allowing for informed advice to the client and appropriate mitigation strategies. This aligns with the Estate Agents Ordinance, Cap. 511, and its subsidiary legislation, which mandate that estate agents act with due diligence and provide accurate information to their clients. Ethical guidelines also require agents to act in the best interests of their clients, which includes safeguarding them from potential legal and financial risks. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the developer's assurances without independent verification. This fails to meet the duty of care expected of a property agent and could expose the client to breaches of covenant, leading to potential legal action by the landlord or other affected parties. Such an approach disregards the regulatory requirement for agents to conduct thorough investigations. Another unacceptable approach is to assume that any existing covenants are no longer enforceable without legal confirmation. The enforceability of covenants can be complex and depends on various factors, including their original intent and subsequent actions. Failing to investigate this thoroughly is a dereliction of professional duty and could lead to significant legal challenges for the client. A further unprofessional approach is to proceed with marketing the property for the proposed development without clearly disclosing any potential covenant issues to prospective buyers. This is a direct violation of disclosure requirements and ethical principles, as it misleads potential purchasers and exposes them to unforeseen liabilities. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes thorough due diligence, clear communication, and adherence to regulatory and ethical standards. This involves 1. Identifying all potential legal and contractual obligations related to the property. 2. Conducting independent verification of all information. 3. Clearly and comprehensively advising the client of any identified risks and potential implications. 4. Documenting all advice and actions taken. 5. Ensuring full compliance with the estate agent's ordinance and relevant codes of conduct. Question 20. Implementation of a property valuation for a client in Hong Kong. A salesperson identifies a vacant commercial unit. The client is interested in maximizing rental income. The outline zoning plan, OSP, for the area indicates the property is zoned Commercial C. The salesperson estimates that if used for office space, the unit could achieve a monthly rent of HK$50,000. If it could be converted to a small retail shop, the estimated monthly rent would be HK$60,000. However, the OZP notes that shop is A, with exception use within this zone, requiring specific approval. The salesperson needs to advise the client on the potential gross annual rental income. What is the most prudent calculation of the potential gross annual rental income, considering Hong Kong's zoning laws and land use regulations? Option A, HK$600,000, based on the estimated monthly rent for office space multiplied by 12 months, as commercial zoning generally permits office use. Option B, HK$720,000, based on the estimated monthly rent for retail shop multiplied by 12 months, assuming the with exception use will be approved. Option C, HK$600,000, based on the estimated monthly rent for office space multiplied by 12 months, as office use is a primary permitted use within commercial zones and does not require further approval. Option D, HK$720,000, based on the estimated monthly rent for a retail shop multiplied by 12 months, as retail is a common use in commercial areas. The correct answer is A, HK$600,000, based on the estimated monthly rent for office space multiplied by 12 months, as commercial zoning generally permits office use. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a salesperson to navigate complex Hong Kong zoning laws and land use regulations while simultaneously performing a financial calculation. Misinterpreting zoning restrictions can lead to significant financial penalties for the client and reputational damage for the salesperson. The need to accurately calculate the potential rental yield based on permitted uses adds a layer of mathematical precision crucial for providing sound advice. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves first confirming the permissible land use for the property under the relevant Hong Kong Town Planning Ordinance and its associated outline zoning plan, OSP. This is critical because the permitted use dictates whether residential or commercial activities are allowed, directly impacting rental income potential. Once the permitted use is confirmed, the salesperson can then accurately calculate the potential gross annual rental income by multiplying the estimated monthly rent by 12. This approach prioritizes regulatory compliance and accurate financial forecasting, ensuring the client receives advice grounded in both legal restrictions and sound financial principles. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately calculate the potential rental income based on a hypothetical residential use without verifying the property's zoning. This fails to account for potential restrictions under the Town Planning Ordinance that might prohibit residential use, rendering the entire calculation irrelevant and potentially misleading the client. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on the property's physical characteristics and market demand for rental properties, ignoring the zoning regulations. Market demand is important. It cannot override legal land use restrictions. A property in a commercially zoned area might have high demand for retail space, but if the salesperson advises on residential rental potential without checking the zoning, they are providing advice that is not legally tenable. A further incorrect approach is to estimate rental income based on a mixed-use assumption without explicit confirmation from the OZP. Hong Kong zoning is often specific, and assuming mixed use without official designation can lead to non-compliance and legal issues for the property owner. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach. First, identify and understand the applicable Hong Kong zoning regulations for the specific property. Second, determine the permitted land use, as defined by the Town Planning Ordinance and the relevant OZP. Third, if the intended use is permissible, proceed with financial calculations, such as estimating rental yield, using accurate market data and appropriate formulas. This structured process ensures that advice is both legally compliant and financially sound, protecting both the client and the salesperson.